Springfield, Vermont is the kind of town where people leave their doors unlocked, where church isn't just a place, it's a rhythm, and where trust isn't questioned. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones already sitting in the front pew. This is the story of Gary Lee Schaefer, a man who blended in until the cracks began to show. Gary Lee Schaefer was born in 1951 in Allentown, Pennsylvania, to Edwin and June Schaefer. At some point during his childhood, his family relocated to Springfield, Vermont, a quiet town, the kind where everyone knows your name and your parents and your past. And Gary, he didn't stand out. He wasn't troubled, wasn't disruptive. People described him as quiet, friendly, reliable. The kind of description that sounds comforting until it isn't. He graduated high school in 1970 with no major red flags, no dramatic incidents, just another young man stepping into adulthood. But then came the first real glimpse behind the curtain. In 1975, Schaefer enlisted in the United States Navy. And for a while, it looked like structure might shape him. Discipline, routine, purpose. But something darker simmered beneath the surface. At some point during his service, Schaefer set fire to his own apartment. Not by accident, not negligence, arson. He was court-martialed and sentenced to 13 months in a military correctional facility in Norfolk, Virginia. Fire is often described as a language, a signal, a release, and in many cases, it's a warning. When Schaefer was released and eventually returned to Springfield, he didn't come back as an outcast. He came back rebranded. Back in Vermont, Schaefer built a new life. He worked as an auto mechanic, honest work, predictable work. And then he turned to the church. He didn't just attend, he immersed himself. He became deeply involved, even delivering Bible sermons to younger members. Picture it, a man standing in front of children, speaking about morality, about good and evil, about right and wrong. A trusted voice, a safe presence. At least that's what everyone believed. August 28th, 1979. 13-year-old Sherry Nastasia disappeared. The last known sighting is chilling in its simplicity. She was seen getting into a dark green Pontiac Firebird driven by an unknown man. No struggle, no witnesses of violence, just gone. Months later, in November, a truck driver stops at a rest area near Rockingham. What he finds changes everything. Skeletal remains near the state police barracks. The remains are identified as Sherry. At first, her cause of death was unclear. Her bones showed a lot of damage, fractures. But later, investigators were able to determine that Sherry had been stabbed. And just like that, a child is gone. A case goes cold. And a predator walks free. 2 years pass. August 31st, 1981. 12-year-old Teresa Marie Fenton goes out for a bike ride. It's the kind of moment that happens every day in small towns. A kid on a bike, a little independence, a little freedom. She never comes home. Teresa was abducted and taken to a wooded area near Mile Hill Road. What happened next was brutal. She was beaten, buried, and left to die. Search teams combed the area. Hours turned into days, but nothing. Until one moment changed everything. A man fishing nearby with his children noticed something wrong, something that didn't belong. An arm reaching out from beneath the leaves. Teresa was still alive when she was found. Barely. She was rushed to Mary Hitchcock Memorial Hospital, but the damage was too severe. She died the next day. And once again, the investigation stalled. No arrests, no answers, just grief and fear, settling quietly over the community. Then came the day everything began to unravel. April 9th, 1983. 11-year-old Catherine Katie Cullen Richards is walking with her friend Rachel Zeitz on Peden Hill Road. A car passes them. By the third pass, it's no longer coincidence. It's hunting. The driver stops, asks for directions. Then he steps out. He threatens to kill them if they don't get in the car. Katie complies. Rachel runs. That decision, that split-second instinct, saved her life. Rachel got to a nearby home, and the police were called. Her description is precise. White male, 20s, about 6 foot tall, slim, short brown hair, a red hooded sweatshirt, with 1983 down the sleeve. A possible light blue Pontiac Sunbird. The next day, Katie's body is found in the woods, partially undressed. The pattern is no longer coincidence. The break in the case comes from an unexpected place. A man named James Millay Sr., who tells investigators that he saw the girls that day. But more importantly, he mentions he had just met with a friend after leaving church early. That friend was Gary Schaefer. When investigators compare Schaefer to the composite sketch, it's close. Too close. So they bring him in. Schaefer gives an alibi. He said he was in Rutland with a coworker. But when police check, that story collapses. Piece by piece. He's arrested. And then he pleads not guilty. He was held on a $50,000 bail and placed on suicide watch. But the investigation doesn't stop there. It expands. Soon, he's linked to another crime. November 1982, 17-year-old Deanna Buxton was kidnapped, threatened with a shotgun, and she survives only because she escaped when her attacker stopped the car. Now investigators are looking at a pattern. A man who hunts, controls, and escalates. As trial approaches, tension builds. Then comes a bombshell. Katie Richards' mother tells the press that Schaefer wrote a letter, a confession, not just to Katie's murder, but to Teresa Fenton's as well. But the letter is never publicly produced. There was a gag order to seal much of the case. So the truth becomes fragmented, hidden, and just out of reach. November 1983, Schaefer is declared mentally competent to stand trial. Remember that. Suddenly, on December 5th, he changes his plea. No contest. He says it's because he wants to clear himself in the eyes of God, which is haunting. Not innocence, not denial, but something else. He's sentenced to 30 years to life for Katie's murder, and then an additional 15 to 20 years for the kidnapping of Deanna Buxton. Even behind bars, the questions didn't stop. Investigators began linking Schaefer to other cases, including the 1968 murder of Joanne Dunham, a case possibly tied to the Connecticut River Valley killer. Then, in May 1984, he's charged with Sherry Nastasia's murder. But that case falls apart. A psychologist, the same psychologist from his last trial, claimed Schaefer had multiple personality disorder, and more critically, that his confession was obtained through hypnosis. So the judge throws it out. All the charges were dropped, and Sherry's case remains unsolved. As for Teresa Fenton's case, Schaefer was granted immunity. Even if he confessed, he could never be charged. For some families, closure never came. Only fragments. Only maybes. In 1985, Schaefer was transferred to the Kentucky State Penitentiary in Eddyville. And there, he stayed. For decades. A man who once stood in a church, now confined behind concrete and steel. November 26, 2023, Gary Lee Schaefer died. His cause of death? A suspicious medical event. Even in his death, there were questions. Gary Schaefer wasn't a stranger. He wasn't an outsider. He was a neighbor, a mechanic, a man of faith, at least on the surface. And that's what makes this story linger. Because sometimes the most dangerous monsters don't hide in the shadows. They sit beside you. They smile. They earn your trust. And by the time the truth surfaces, it's already too late. If you have any information regarding the unsolved murder of Sherry Nastasia, authorities still encourage tips to be submitted. Because even decades later, her family is still waiting for answers. That's our story today of the first serial killer of Vermont. Let me know what you thought of this new process of how I'm delivering the story. If you like it, if you don't, let me know. I encourage you. Until then, stay true and whatnot. Bye.